Assalamu alaikum. This is a gentle reminder that the session will be in English. However, the session will also be translated. If you would need a translation device, please raise your hand and someone will be here to assist you. Your Excellency, Mariam bint Mohammed Almheiri, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, our climate ambassadors, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. My name is Elyazia Al-Hosani, and I am delighted to welcome you to today's unique event which takes advantage of the COP28 setting to combine the worlds of climate diplomacy and media. As we take stock of outcomes of COP28, while this wonderful global event enters its final days, we see that there are many outcomes to take in. The scope is enormous, as we not only have climate mitigation and adaptation, but also food systems, finance, innovation, investment, youth, the role of women, climate justice, and many other areas. In terms of climate leadership, diplomacy, we are fortunate indeed to have the ultimate insider with us today. Her Excellency Mariam bint Mohammed Almheiri, UAE Minister of Climate Change and Environment and the COP28 Food Systems Lead, whom I warmly welcome to today's event. In her public engagements, Her Excellency's clear and consistent messaging has greatly advanced the understanding of the wider public of the complex climate change discourse. Multilateral successes at COP28 so far have included the resilient food systems, which has been led by Her Excellency, and the Emirates Declaration on Sustainable Agriculture, among other successes such as the Global Methane Reduction Pledge, financial pledges for billions of dollars in the UAE's own climate fund, and the Agreement on Loss and Damage, which have similarly taken months and months of diplomatic engagement. Addressing our climate ambassadors today, we are also fortunate to have you all here for the role of media, content creators, as it is critical onto ongoing successes of COP28 and climate efforts in general. Your Excellency, the Minister, the UAE has decades of long history of policy support for renewable energy and other decarbonization programs and projects. The UAE Summit has globalized ambitions which added to this global momentum, making the achievement of the national target of net zero by 2050 seem highly likely. In your opinion, do you foresee the UAE's domestic climate action will slow down after the conclusion of COP28, stay the same, or perhaps even accelerate?
So first of all, Elyazia, before I answer your question, I want to say thank you so much for all coming today. I have actually told my team, and Hajar, she is my comms director, I told her I really want to see social media influencers because you have so much power in your hands. And I just want to thank you for all your efforts and everything you're doing to even get the young people to understand what this is about. So I just want to, if it's okay, Elyazia, I'm just going to speak a little bit about how we got to where we are today, because we promised the world we would deliver the most inclusive COP ever and the most solutions-oriented COP. And I tell you, on day zero or day one, when the agenda was adopted, and by the way, this has never happened before, that the agenda gets adopted on day zero, that when this happened, and then the operationalization of the Loss and Damage Fund, and then the UAE stepped up with money, and then Germany, and so on, and now we're at over $720 million in the Loss and Damage Fund. This is historic. And it just shows, and I think we surprised a lot of people positively. And they said, hey, wait a minute. This small country has huge dreams and has always said, we will deliver. And they're delivering. We have announced in these past few days 11 declarations on bringing the world together to agree on certain things. And I have had the honor to work a lot on the food systems, as you mentioned, Elyazia. And what we did was historic. On day one, I had center stage for food systems. This has never happened before. In all the 27 COPs, everyone always says food systems is on the sidelines. Do you know that food systems is the second largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions after energy? So we could solve all the energy problem, but we would not reach 1.5 degrees if we don't solve food systems and agriculture. That's how important food systems and agriculture is. But COP28 promised, we put it in center stage, and we delivered. Getting 134 signatories on day one was a historic moment. 10 days later, yesterday, I announced 152. Today, actually, it's 154. So this has never happened before, not even in any food system summit before us. So this shows the power of the UAE being able to unite the world. And by the way, this didn't just happen because of us being the UAE. We took a huge step, and I'm sure some of you may follow me. I've traveled a lot, of course, His Excellency Dr. Sultan, the whole COP28 presidency team. We've been traveling and we've been listening, and we've not only been listening to governments, we've been listening to all stakeholders. We've been listening to indigenous peoples, we've been listening to farmers, we've been listening to local governments, we've been listening to communities, all so that we make sure that when we put a declaration together, everybody can come on board. Now, these are all historic moments. I mean, we have now more than $83 billion of mobilized investments. This was just after 5 days. Again, historic. And I tell you, the world is looking at us like, wow, this little country with big dreams is actually uniting the world. We're acting and we're delivering. And so for me, it makes me so proud as an Emirati to actually walk around the expo site and see the global community smiling at us, because not only are they seeing that we're delivering, but they're getting to know us, who we are, what are our values, knowing that we're positive people. We have this natural optimism. Allah yarhamah Sheikh Zayed, our founding father, was the one who seeded all this in us. He always was looking to the future with optimism. And so we continue this legacy. And it's a proud moment if you look at the more than 20 years of our climate journey. I mean, if you look at 2006 when Masdar was established, why was Masdar established? To start looking at how we can build the knowledge that we need around renewable energies, how we can invest. And now Masdar is one of the top companies in the world when it comes to investments in renewables. Then you look at the next steps. 2015, we ratified the Paris Agreement, one of the first countries in the region. Again, because we are always thinking of what's coming in front of us. Then the next step after that are NDCs. We are one of the very few countries that have really stepped up and raising the ambition on our NDCs, and we've been updating it the last 3 years, consequently, every year updating. In 2021, it was at 23.5. Then we said, no, we can do better. We raised it down to 31, and we got down to 40. I mean, this showcases the UAE's serious commitments on this journey. Many people don't realize we have 4 of the largest solar parks in the world here in the UAE. We have the nuclear power plant is an exemplary in its excellence and its quality. People are looking at this Baraka power plant because it really is one of the solutions that we need to look at. We've just started our journey on wind power as well. You know that our GDP, so more than 72% of our GDP is non-oil based. People don't realize this. So we as a country, we're on that journey, and we've learned so much on this journey. By the way, I find we've learned that there are 4 foundational tools we need on this journey. That's why COP28 is all about a just energy transition. Number 1, you need leadership. You need political will for any transition. Number 2, you need resources. You need money to invest into these new energy systems. They're not cheap. Number 3, you need to upskill the people. We're going now to a new technology. We're going to new know-how. So you need to upskill. And number 4, you need to change the mindset. not just mindset of government, private sector, the community needs to say, okay, I accept this and I will buy it. So these 4 foundations are what we have taken over the years. So we understand when we talk about a just energy transition, we understand what this means because we've lived it or we're living it. Now, when we're here at COP28, what is our role? Not only us as a country, of course, we make sure our commitments are done. We have to help others. There are many countries that don't have these foundations. So getting the declarations is your political will. This is the number 1 from the 4 that I just mentioned. Getting finance, we're unlocking this money. And by the way, it's still not enough. Still, we need to do more. But then all the other things, these are the countries themselves have to pick them up and do them. But it is our responsibility as part of the international community, as part of Earth, to say, you know what, it is our responsibility. We are responsible international citizens. We will help our fellow other country members to come on this journey with us because climate change is hitting us all. Each country has their own resources. Each country has their own strengths. But we have to move together. We cannot leave anyone behind. And that's why my colleague, His Excellency Dr. Sultana Jaber, has always said, just, and leaving no one behind. And this is because of who we are. So this journey in itself is one we're on. And back to your question, I would say the UAE is going to accelerate. We are now already on the pathway to net zero. And by the way, this pathway, it's not a business as usual pathway. It is a pathway where we need to change mindsets, where investments will flow into new technologies, where we'll be attracting new skills, new technologies, new industries, and where we're hoping that a lot of the younger generation, many of you here, will start looking at. And by the way, all of our decisions here make a difference. I myself had to also think about, what am I doing when it comes to food waste? What am I doing when it comes to the choice of the car I'm going to buy? What is my decision when it comes to clothes? Do I look at sustainability or do I just choose things because I like them or I like the brand? So we have to change a little bit also in our thinking. And I think it's the younger generation that we can really count on because they are hungry for this. They're hungry and they know that what we're talking about here is their lives, by the way. So COP28, I always say to the young people, all the decisions we make today, it is to ensure for the lives of the young people. Bye, Raya. Like Raya, I always, it's so great to see how active she is. And I really just want to say that you all have such a huge role to play. But the only way you can actually do something is first to understand and to know. That's why this step of you all being here and I having the conversation with you, I hope I can give you some knowledge for you to say, you know what, I want to take action. Yesterday, I need to speak about it because I'm very proud. Abdullah Rumaifi, he launched something called the UAE Environment Identification. And what this is about is for consumers to understand what is their carbon footprint when it comes to electricity, water, fuel consumption, waste, because when you know what you're doing, what your carbon footprint is, you can make better decisions. If I give you a list of food and I tell you what calories there are, you're informed of something and you can say, you know what, I think I've already had 2 meals, I'll just take something. Otherwise, we're just going to say, Wallah khafif, and just have it. And then what happens? So it's really important we give you the tools of knowledge. And everyone who's living here in the UAE, I think we are so lucky to be in this country with the leadership we have, who has really empowered youth, empowered all of us to speak our minds, empowered us to have alternatives in our lives, to lead good lives, but be champions in everything we do and make sure that we help others. I know it was a long answer, but just...
No, honestly, your answer is actually very heartwarming because it makes me even more proud to be sitting with one of the people that made all of this happen. And you're right, it is the youth, but it gives us this sense of responsibility that we are also responsible to make the future a better place together. And I always say, to be an Emirati is to be Zayed. Your Excellency, we'll move on to the next question, which will focus on the UAE hosting COP28 itself. And this question was established, it was like the UAE is one of the leaders of the global decarbonization efforts, and it's exemplified by the Emirates Declaration, Loss and Damage Decision and Fund, and other global initiatives. We have heard several times from observers that the UAE is increasingly seen as the bridge between the global north and south, though that may itself be simplification. After COP28, and it would be wound down, what are the policies and diplomatic activities that will ensure that the UAE continues to be seen as a global leader in addressing climate change?
So I think what we've done in COP28 itself, just getting the numbers that we're seeing, showcases that we are bridge builders. I mean, we have been for many years, but I think for the world to actually see the power of what we've been able to do has really been showcased at COP28. And by the way, it continues. We have a lot of back doors open to many countries around the world where we continue dialogue to try and help those who are suffering around the world. And you all know that while we are doing what we're doing here at COP28, and we hope the outcomes of the negotiations will be positive, as are all the things outside the negotiations room, we wanted to also make sure that everyone who's here experiences UAE's hospitality. And I'll give you some simple examples of, I've been to 2 COPs myself. I always complained about the food. And by the way, for the negotiators, to be able to negotiate and have good outcome, they need good food. They need fresh air. They need to do some exercise. And this COP28 here at Expo City Dubai has really been the best place to actually give them what they need as a foundation to have the best outcome. This is number one. What's going to happen after COP28? First of all, I have to say I'm also proud of my team and all the stakeholders that I've been working with. It's been such a learning curve. The UAE, yesterday you saw the cabinet approved a whole series of strategies, policies, tools. We are establishing now the National Carbon Registry. I know many of you may not know what this is, but this registry is where you can, as a company, say, you know what, I want to cut my emissions, but I need a body to be able to say, this is where you are, this is where you're heading to, and this is your certificate to show your carbon credits. So this is something we're moving towards because there are many carbon credits now, or carbon markets being set up around the world. So this is a kind of tool we're giving to the private sector so they can decarbonize. Number 2, as we are on the net zero strategy, which we announced at the annual government meeting, again, this is a strategy for the country. It's not a strategy for the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment. It's a country strategy that really pushes the pro-growth, pro-climate agenda that we're on. We identified 6 sectors that we need to decarbonize. So we have the energy sector, the building sector, the transportation sector, the industry sector, the agriculture sector, the waste sector, and I hope I didn't miss any of them, but there were 6 of them. And each of these sectors have to be decarbonized. Each have their own challenges and their own skills that are needed. So we will be, in the next 2 to 3 years, looking at new policies to ensure that we're staying on the path of net zero. Because as you can imagine, if we do business as usual, our emissions, because population is growing, will remain kind of on a straight line. While we are going on the net zero pathway, this line will start dipping down. Now, in order to it to dip down, we will need to look at new policies. We will need to look at ramping up technologies. We will need to look at consumers changing their behavior. So all this, every 2-3 years, we're going to have to re-look and revise the policies. And developing these policies also needs innovations, not just on a hardware side, but also the thinking and the designing that we have to do. So we're going to be learning a lot. And by the way, every country is going to go through this. Every country that is on the net zero pathway is going to go through this. So the UAE can be really proud that we are one of those countries that are in front of the wave on this pathway.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I want to elaborate more on the UAE's pavilions at COP28 and how they line with the country's vision on sustainability and emphasize more on innovation and education. Could Your Excellency describe to the audience here today what the UAE's pavilions represent, both in terms of the country's vision of a sustainable future, as well as what the pavilions represent to you personally?
Yeah. So you can imagine when we were thinking about how we're going to design these pavilions, of course, at any COP, the pavilions have to be a space where you have workshops, presentations, meetings. So you have to think of the kind of setup and rooms that you need to be able to do that. And as you know, the UAE has all the stakeholders in the UAE, from local governments, federal governments, all want to do their meetings, their MOUs, their events. So you can imagine my team had, I think it was at least 150 events that they had to try and do just in the first week and try and plug that in. So you need that space to be able to do that. Plus, we wanted to make sure that any visitor that comes to the pavilion understands who we are as people. Many are surprised we're only 52 years old. I mean, it was wonderful that we were able to celebrate this with everyone here. But also what we wanted to showcase is where we come from. So the legacy of the late Sheikh Zayed was very much prominent in both pavilions. And then also what our net zero by 2050 journey is about, and what areas and technologies and that have been showcased previously, but also the new ones that we think have a lot of promising results and will be building upon. So and you also see a lot of the national capacity, so the kawadir al-dawla, yani, that they are there as well, really showcasing proudly who they are and what they're doing in the entities that they're working in. So we have a lot of the Emiratis from the local governments, from the federal governments, talking about their stories so that people can see we're also a lot of young people are in these entities, and they are the future of tomorrow, and they are building the future with us for their future and their children's future.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Actually, it makes me proud too. From the second I walk into the security doors till the time I get to the Green Zone Media, I could see how Emiratis are walking around, smiling, and how proud they are to just be at a place like this. I think the last question is one of my favorite questions, because media plays a very crucial role in voicing the stories within. The National Media Office launched a program that brings together local, regional, and global content creators in the aim of projecting the biggest global event in the field of climate. The ambassadors are here to become the voices echoing the urgent need for climate action. Something I've learned throughout this is that statistics are just statistics. It's the stories and the people behind these statistics that actually really matter. So the question would go around, why do you believe media, including content creators and our ambassadors here today, are considered a pivotal in providing coverage and amplifying awareness for global events centered around sustainability and fostering a unified global understanding and encouraging collective action towards a shared vision?
I think I will tell you what I think as a person, how your role is so important. I'm sitting in the seat of a Minister of Climate Change and Environment. And believe me, in the last 2 years of being in this seat, I have learned a lot. If somebody comes to me and says NDC, I know what it is. If somebody comes to me and says NDCA, I know what it is. This is all technical. You all have the power to take the information and simplify it in a way that more people will understand. And the only way to get action on the ground is when people understand what they should do.
Sure.
If the governments are talking one language and I'm talking technical, and the people don't understand what I'm talking about, they will be like, okay, let them do what they have to do and we'll just continue. If they listen to all of you who are simplifying the language of taking something very simple, I mean, I don't know if you did know about the food systems in agriculture being the second largest contributor. I don't know if you did know that we managed to bring 154 countries to unite and agree on a text about food systems and agriculture, even though the UAE is not a big agriculture country, but we definitely depend on the global food systems. But again, you take very simple, or I try to make it very simple for you to take it to your followers in a very simple language. And I can tell you three things. The government has a role to play to say this is where we want to be and this is where we want to reach. And make sure we drive the seat. We make sure we speak to our counterparts in different countries and say this is where the UAE wants to be. Do you want to partner with us? And by the way, we're getting so many new partners now. Number two, the private sector has a role to play. And I'm sure you've heard the word ESG. What's ESG? It's for a company to take care of the environmental, social, and governance pillars in their companies. Now, when people go to get a new job, they will probably ask the company, what do you do when it comes to ESG? Because it's a responsibility now that companies have to take to showcase that they care about the environment and they will do something for the environment. If I tell you in a nutshell what the whole problem is with climate change, it's that we all have been disrespecting nature for too long. And now nature is saying, I can't take this anymore. You have to help me. And this is why we're doing what we're doing. This is it in a nutshell. We've been disrespecting nature for too long. The third pillar, I was talking about government's role, I was talking about private sector role, and now the communities. Each and every one of us have a role to play. If you just take a few minutes with your families to reflect a little bit about what you are doing to make sure you're not disrespecting the environment, be it your decisions, be it how you eat, be it how you, just as a simple, I remember seeing a lot of people just throwing rubbish out of the car windows. I don't know if you remember these kind of this. We still remember this. I had people in my family who did it, and I had to actually get up and say, do you know what happens when that happens? When they knew, then they were like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. So it's not something that you do because you want to hurt something or hurt someone, but it's something you do without thinking.
True.
Our world is moving so fast. Technology is moving so fast. Our lives are so fast that we sometimes forget about looking out of the window when we're in our cars, because we're always looking at our screens. And I'm guilty of it too. Just take a minute to look out at the wonders of what Allah has created for us, and that we need to respect every living creature on planet Earth. And the whole fight against climate change right now, taking these baby steps, we're not going to win. The only way we can win is to move faster. That's the key. And that's why I'm counting on all of you. Take the messages you have heard here. Take the positivity, the optimism. Speak to your family, speak to your friends, and just reflect a little bit on what small changes you can do in your lives to be a better person, to be an environmental steward. Because Allah yarhamah, Sheikh Zayed was the best role model for us. I don't know if many of the social influencers know. I know the ones who are from the UAE know this. But just small things. You see videos of how he was caring for creatures and even just a tree. If there was a road to be built somewhere and there was a tree, and the engineers were like, okay, we'll just cut down a tree. No way. He will put in the extra funds and make sure that the road goes around the tree. Everybody knows these stories, but we need to remember who we are as Emiratis. We need to remember that these values need to be carried on. And we need to sometimes take the time in our lives to reflect a little bit, because we are in the mess we're in because we've forgotten a lot of things. When it comes to food, do you know how much goes into the bin? We're all guilty of it. Can we, when we go and eat out, take the food that's remaining, pack it up and take it, maybe somebody else will eat it later, or as we pass it on to someone who knows will be happy with it. Some people take it even for their pets. It doesn't matter. At least we make sure that that doesn't go into the bin. So it's just small things, but it makes a huge difference. And that's why we all have a role to play. We're doing great when it comes to governments, private sector, but us as a community, we have a huge role to play.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I think one example is that I personally now go to restaurants, and when we're sitting down and you see like so many people around us, and it's what amazes me is that when there's still food on the table, they take it with them, and you would literally see them outside of the restaurant giving it to someone else that's in need. And that itself makes a bigger difference.
And the infrastructure that the UAE has built, the UAE food banks and things like that, can all help us to say, you know what, let's take this and put it into a different stream.
True. And I think all that goes back to how we have these morals and values that were enrooted within us through Sheikh Zayed. May his soul rest in peace. I'm going to shift it now into giving a voice of the voices within. Because you are the bridges that connect stories to the world. So it would be a great honor to shift it and ask you, the climate ambassadors, to tell us more about the responsibility you carry and how it makes you feel as a person to hold this responsibility, the country's responsibility, and try to deliver the messages to the world, and also the challenges you may face when you simplify these heavy contents into a global language. We're going to quiet mics.
Don't be shy.
اسمحوا لي بس بتكلم بالعربي طبعا. يعطيكم العافية. نشكر معالي الوزيرة على هذه الجلسة والرسائل المهمة. طبعا الشكر أول شيء للمكتب الوطني للإعلام اللي أعطانا هذه الثقة أن نكون سفراء. أعتقد يمكن لأهم حدث تستضيفه دولة الإمارات في خلال 50 سنة. وجود هذا الكم الكبير من القادة، من البروتوكولات، من قصص النجاح اللي شفناها في هذا الحدث، شيء حملنا مسؤولية كبيرة، وشيء يمكن صعب انك تقدر تغطي كل قصص النجاح اللي موجودة في كوب 28 اليوم. انا اعتقد ان هذا الكوب او هذا المؤتمر كان درس للعالم كله عن طريقة الاستضافة، البروتوكولات، التنظيم، الاحترافية في كل الإجراءات. يمكن على سبيل المثال يمكن المجال اللي تهتمين فيه معاليك موضوع الأكل يمكن.
نعم.
فلما تركز وتشوف إنه يمكن في اليوم 250 ألف وجبة يتم تحضيرها لضيوف الكوب، بس طبعا كم الشغل اللي يكون وراء هذا الموضوع. هذا جزء بسيط ترى من اللي نشوفه يمكن إحنا بس في الظاهر. فقصص نجاح اللهم لك الحمد نفتخر فيها. يعني دولتنا وعدت انها تكون كوب مختلفة عن 27 كوب سابقة، وفعلا كانوا قد الثقة سواء بالانجازات بالارقام. اللي شفناه شيء يثلج الصدر ويحملنا مسؤولية كبيرة ان نحاول نبرز هذا الجهد ونبرز هذه القصص اللي نشوفها كل يوم صراحة. انا اللي اعتقد ان كل بيت اماراتي ساهم في انجاح هذا المؤتمر، وكل بيت إماراتي يستحق أن نقول له شكرا، وكل شخص في هذه الدولة يستحق أن نقول له شكرا على هذا النجاح الكبير.
شكرا.
First of all, I would thank you for this amazing work, and I will answer in Arabic because I'm usually proud of my language. في البداية أول شيء نشكر المكتب الوطني للإعلام على هذه الفرصة الجميلة اللي خلتنا نتكلم عن جهود الإمارات في العمل المناخي والاستدامة. الإمارات رمز للاستدامة، الإمارات تاريخها كان مستدام، وإن شاء الله المستقبل مستدام. المعلومات اللي لازم نبسطها، الأرقام اللي جالسة تصير والإنجازات الكبيرة الأسطورية ما شاء الله تبارك الرحمن والتاريخية تعتبر يعني مثل ما تقول نقطة تحول في كوب 28. كان لها أرقام مذهلة. نتكلم عن غلاسكو 30,000 مبعوث، ونحن عندنا الدبل ف90,000 شخص حاضر. الإمارات من ممكن الناس ما تعرف أنها تصدر بعض الخضروات وتصدر بعض الأمور اللي هي مفروض أن الدولة صحراوية ما تصدرها. نحن كدولة كانت رمز للتغيير، دولة لا تعرف المستحيل، وعلمت الناس أن ما في مستحيل في العمل المناخي. فمسؤوليتنا كبيرة نحن كإعلام. كل الأشخاص الموجودين هنا اليوم كل واحد منهم تكلم عن العمل المناخي في دولة الإمارات بطريقته الخاصة. الناس صعب تفهم الأرقام الكبيرة. خلينا نتكلم عن طن انبعاثات كربونية. شو تمثل؟ ما حد يعرف، فلازم انت تبسطها بطريقتك ولازم تبحث وتعرف. كوب 28 متى صار؟ ما حد كان يعرف انه كان قمه الارض في البدايه في ريو دي جانيرو مثلا. فالامور هذه نحن كاعلاميين لازم نبحث عنها بشكل ثقيل ونبسطها بشكل ممكن الكل يفهمها. فكل واحد من الموجودين اليوم كان جزء من نجاح دولة الإمارات في هذا العمل، ولكن النجاح ما كان مستغرب على دولة لها جسور كبيرة بين العالم. يعني دولة الإمارات تستضيف الكل والكل يحب أنه يتعاون مع دولة الإمارات. فنلاحظ الدعم الكبير اللي صار من أول يوم لليوم هذا، فهذا الشيء اللي يخلينا نحن فخورين. ومسؤوليتنا مستمرة مش بس في كوب، اللي بعد كوب بإذن الله كل الجهود المناخية وكل الجهود خصوصا في ملفكم ملف الأمن الغذائي، كل هذا بإذن الله بيكون له نظرة وصورة جديدة تنطرح للجمهور بشكل مختلف بصوت يشبه أصواتنا. فنتمنى التوفيق للجميع إن شاء الله.
حس ما بطول عليكم، بس الصراحة شكرا أولا لمعالي الوزيرة، شكرا ليازيا، شكرا لكل المنظمين. وأنا وايد حبيت كلام معاليك، وكل شوي أقول حق محمد نقطة مهمة. ففعلا أشوف أن نحن كسفراء أو كإعلاميين يعني نحن نمثل حلقة الوصل. ومثل ما قلتي لغة المؤتمرات ولغة المنتديات غالبا صعبة لعامة الناس، ويمكن هذا اللي قدرنا نحن نسويه كصناع محتوى، وهذا اللي خلى عندنا نوع من القبول في المجتمع، ان انت تجيب اللغه الصعبه هذه وتبسطها وتوصلها للناس. لكن في قضايا المناخ اعتقد بعد في مصطلحات كثيره ممكن الكثير من الناس يعتقدون انها واضحه ولكنها مش واضحه للمجتمع. كوب 28 كمؤتمر اصلا الى الان في ناس يعني يوم ارجع البيت يقول شو هذا كوب 28. كذلك مصطلحات مثل الحياد المناخي، مثل التغير المناخي، ومثل أشياء قد تبدو بسيطة للناس اللي قريبين من هذه الساحة، ولكنها لعامة الناس تحتاج، وهي من قيمنا ومن مبادئنا. يعني يوم كنت تتكلمين عن النظافة، كلنا نعرف أن النظافة من الإيمان، واللي دخل الجنة لأن أماط الأذى عن الطريق، وكل هذه المعاني موجودة لها أصول عندنا نحن، بس نحتاج نسوي هذا اللينك والربط وننشر. جزاك الله خير وشكرا لكم جميعا ويعطيكم العافيه.
ولدي سالم يوم كنت اتكلم وايد عن كوب قال لي ماما يو ان ترابل وذ ذا بوليس، بس ما كان يعرف ان كوب convening of parties. again هذا كله مصطلحات انا بعد تعلمت وايد خلال سنتين على it's really technical. فالمفاوضين بعد اللي هم الحين شغالين هذا article 6 it's very very technical. وهذا بعد يعني كان عندنا يعني مسيرة أن نحن بعد نتعلم الشباب شو هاللغة وليش كل مصطلح أو كل كلمة بعد فيها معنى. في ناس بعد يعني وين يحطون الفاصلة مهم بعد، يعني بهالدقة هم شغالين الحين في الغرف.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I want to personally say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being here. And thank you for all the effort you put to make all this happen. It was a dream and you turned it into reality. Your Excellency, distinguished guests, attendees, ambassadors, we thank you for your insightful engagement and impactful imperative input. We gathered today to make the change we aim to leave for the next generations to come and leave a positive mark that will be engraved and remembered as the sustainable step forward. Thank you.
I want to just also I want to thank the National Media Office as well. Thank you, Your Excellency Matar, and your team. صراحة أنا قلت لهم I need to see some social media influencers because I think again, like I said in the beginning, you're very very powerful. And I know شعب الإمارات وايد يحبون to follow influencers. So seeing bright-minded, positive, and a lot of you I see are male here. I just want to tell you as a young Emirati as well, I often see fathers going with their kids on the weekend. A lot of them, I see them sitting, taking them to Fun City or whatever. Then they sit on their phones and the kids are playing, okay? I want to tell you, we have so many beautiful places now in the UAE, protected areas. I don't know if you know, we have 49 protected areas in the UAE. I want you to take them to these places because when you take them to these places, not only are you learning, but also they're seeing you being amazed and the positivity that comes. So I really want to also work with many of you now and show you some of the amazing places you can take your kids to just make them understand, not be afraid of the animals and the creatures and the waters, but actually understand that we have so many blessings. في دولة الإمارات. A lot of us just stay in the cities, and by the way, this is probably in a lot of places around the world. Take your kids out to the sea, to the mountains, go hiking. Take them out and do an active activity with them. I promise you, they will start respecting the environment automatically because they will feel how it makes them feel, and they will love it. And I'm seeing you all have is it the mango tree or the gaf tree? I cannot see the mangrove, right? This is a starting point. You'll take these home and they'll ask you, why do you have this? And you have to give them a story. You have to tell them this. The UAE has so far 60 million mangroves. And we're now on a journey to plant 100 million mangroves by 2030, ilafiyan, on top of the 60 million mangroves. Because we understand that mangroves not only bring a lot of the fish and the birds and the crabs and really help with biodiversity, but they take so much CO2 from the atmosphere. Actually 4 to 5 times more than the forest trees. And this is a blessing in itself. And why are we doing this? Because they're beautiful to look at. Take your kids kayaking through the mangrove. We have a lot of mangrove sites, as you know, Ayman, Abu Dhabi. Take them on a mangrove kayak tour and plant the mangrove, and you're going to see in about 4 or 5 years, this mangrove can take the CO2 emissions from your own household. That's how powerful it is. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.